Okay, guys, here we are for another episode then of the Martial Review here, and today we've got Tommy Moore and Bartitsu Lab. So, Tommy, do you want to introduce yourself then, buddy, and just say a little bit about yourself?
Cool. So I'm Tommy Moore. I'm founder of a martial arts club called the Bartitsu Lab, and we study a weird little art called Bartitsu.
Cool.
So for those of you who haven't heard of it before, it's an art from Victorian England, and it combines bare knuckle boxing, Savate, which is like a French kickboxing system. If people who've done JKD or similar, they would have heard of it. Catch wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and the use of a variety of different weapons, all smushed together. So that's something I coach from my dojo in Warwickshire.
Fantastic. How did you get started then in doing this? Was it like from a child? Did you do martial arts, or was it a later on kind of thing? Or
So as a child, I was really fortunate in that I was put into boxing and judo, and from my perspective at least, there are no two better arts to chuck a small child into. Being punched in the face and ragged around by other people.
Yeah, that's a good starting point.
So I was put into boxing and judo, and I've done that ever since. So since I was 5 up until today, I still do those two core foundational arts. But over time, I'm a bit of a martial arts nerd, so I've picked up lots of different things. So I was fortunate. I trained Muay Thai with Eddie Quinn. So again, you can't get much better teacher than Eddie Quinn. He's just amazing.
Yeah.
JKD with Nigel Trotman as part of the Cass Madga lineage.
Very nice.
All manner of things, Arnis, Eskrima, but I've always stuck to boxing and judo / jiu-jitsu. But I'm also quite, I'm a very big fan of what's known as Hema, historical European martial arts. And a lot of those people, for viewers that aren't familiar, is they'll take manuscripts and books from the Middle Ages and from all the way up to the Victorian era, and essentially recreate fighting systems. So long swords, spear, you name it. People are bringing it back to life and sparring with it and doing great things with it. And as part of that movement, people were looking at what unarmed historic martial arts could potentially be brought back and reformed. And there's lots of things about historic bare knuckle boxing called pugilism, and catch wrestling's having a massive revival thanks to people like Josh Bartnett. But Bartitsu was one of the outlying fields there. And so given the skills I've got and the experiences I've had in lots of different arts, I found that this is something I could really run with and share with people and bring together kind of the martial artsy people, the fighty people, because I'm from a boxing and judo background. If you don't leave with lumps in your face, you're doing something wrong. And the team community. So Bartitsu allows me to bring together all those bits into some kind of Venn diagram.
Amazing. Yeah, cool. That sounds really, really cool. What made you stick with the judo and the jiu-jitsu and the boxing then, and kind of dabbled around the JKD, the Muay Thai?
What always makes me stick with judo and boxing is just the sheer honesty of it. It's brutally honest, and it's minimum faff. You know, in judo, you know, let's say in a 90-minute session, you might be doing some technique work for maybe 15 minutes, here a couple of throws, and then you're in the randori, then you're grappling, trying it, and you're against massive people, you're against tiny people, boys, girls, you know, it throws you right in at the deep end. It's same with boxing. You know, the senseis and the coaches, they're always good, salt of the earth people. You know, you can go to some Eastern martial arts club and you'll get some nutters, some pajama wearers, and some really good people.
Yeah.
But you'll very rarely see a boxing gym survive where the people are rubbish, or a judo gym survive and the people are rubbish. So I really love how visceral and real that is, and you know it's working or you know it's not by how you feel when you wake up the next day, which is really important. And so I like whatever art I go into, I like to treat it with the same honesty and reflection I would in a boxing gym or in a judo dojo.
Yeah, perfect. What was your first introduction to some of the historical aspects then? So looking at Hema and the pugilism and
So I went randomly when I was about 18 to an event called Fight Camp, right? And Fight Camp, essentially, it sets up in the middle of a historic field somewhere, loads of big bloody medieval tents, and for an entire weekend, a load of nutters meet and fight with swords, axes, spears, and they teach and they train and they share ideas with each other. I randomly went to this because I'm a bit of a nerd and I thought it'd be quite fun, but I went by myself, and I really enjoyed it, and I really loved the sword arts and playing with all that stuff. And I had a Filipino background, so you know, a long sharp thing or a long blunt thing, it's kind of the same regardless. No matter what it is, it kind of works the same way. So I really enjoyed that and threw myself into it. But there was a couple of sessions on unarmed stuff. I liked it. I liked exploring it, but I found that a lot of the instructors were from more of a research background. So a lot of the people that were doing it at the time they'd read the books and they'd see the photos and they know how to do it, but none of them have ever been competitive, none of them ever fought, none of them ever done anything combative, whether sportive or working doors or things like that.
Yeah.
So I thought that this is an area where I could bring a slightly different perspective. So after that event, I explored Hema more, but also kind of made a focus of mine to bring something different to the table, to bring together the fighty stuff and the research stuff, which is really important.
Did you struggle to bring the two together, or was it quite a natural progression for you to kind of add them and merge them?
It's still a nightmare because they're quite disparate communities. You know, martial arts communities are so disparate anyway. You've got, you know, traditional martial arts, you've got MMA, you've got kind of combat sports, singular combat sports. They're all very siloed and they're all islands into themselves as it is.
Sure.
Hema is like this weird six-toed cousin over here that none of the others have heard of.
Yeah.
So my class makeup is made of traditional martial artists, Hema people, and combat sports people. And I suppose my job as a coach is to meet all their expectations, but without selling myself too cheaply. You know, I've got a course syllabus, which I've made for what I teach, and I try and stick to that. There are coaches that have their own different syllabus. But for me, I try and keep it as real as I possibly can. But it is very hard because people have very different expectations. But at its core, Bartitsu was designed as a self-defense art made out of combat sports disciplines. In the same way that I suppose Jeet Kune Do is to many respects. You know, you've got your boxing, you've got Savate, you've got catch. You know, in Wing Chun, obviously you've got in JKD you've got the Wing Chun element. But in the main, you're making something mostly for self-defense out of bits and pieces that in many ways are mostly for combat sports. So it's a kind of similar process and evolution, I think.
Yeah. So would you say that what you're teaching now is more self-defense based, or is it more combat sport based?
Self-defense based. So I think you have to understand, and I really believe for you to be any good at self-defense, you need first-hand experience of fighting. Now, whether that fighting is real fighting or whether that fighting is ring fighting, ideally both. But I really struggle with the notion that you can teach very good, some people can, but teaching very good self-defense without having been scared and battered in front of lots of people going, "Way!" You know, you need that fear and that experience to do it well. So I still keep very much a self-defense bent to it, but I encourage all my students to compete. And, you know, I see things like, you know, Russell Jamasti, you've seen his stuff. He teaches karate and jiu-jitsu, but he still has his guys go into white-collar boxing matches just to get them used to being knocked about and, you know, to try it for real. So it's really important that whilst self-defense is the mindset, that the combat sports are kind of the tools in the tool belt to get you there.
Perfect. And how does maybe the weapons then come into it? How does it come into in terms of the syllabus and then also in terms of self-defense?
So the weapons are really interesting, and I've got kind of two branches of weapons in my classes. There are lots of people that are into classic Bartitsu, and classic Bartitsu is predominantly cane-based. If you imagine you've got an eskrima stick, right? A Bartitsu cane is probably a third longer with a weighted end to it, so it's more like a small mace. And there are lots, as you can imagine, there are a huge number of ways to use that classical weapon.
Sure.
You get things with umbrella and things that are slightly related to that. So that's the kind of classical Bartitsu weapon. And I teach that, and a lot of that is based upon fencing and fencing systems, because it's a European system. So fencing is the basis for a lot of this stuff. But by the same token, I also teach in my Bartitsu class lots of small common weapons that were common at the time when Bartitsu was made and common today. You know, a knife is a knife is a knife.
Sure.
A baton is a baton is a baton. It doesn't matter when they're used. These are sound principles. I also put a lot of time into incidental weapons. So if any of you've seen my YouTube channels, I put a work into, you know, bottles, belts, pens, stuff that you'd have today. But I'm very much about teaching weapons based on an archetype. You know, there are short, sharp things, long, sharp things, short, blunt things, long, blunt things, and flexible things. And that's it. You know, and as long as you've got the foundational skills with it, you could, you know, to quote dodgeball, you know, you could it could be a wrench, could be a
dodge a wrench, dodge a dodgeball. Yeah,
exactly. You know, they're all archetypal. I'd really encourage anyone to take a good interest in using weapons. I struggle with a lot of self-defense arts, and people get so used to defending them, but they never train actually how to use them. I think that's a massive part. You know, if I can get a knife off someone, I need to know how to use that knife. There's no point me going, "Oh, stop that." People that watch the news, you saw the attack in Reading just this weekend. You know, if by hook or by crook you manage to get that knife off someone like that, you need to know how to use that knife, because that person's not going to stop. That person's still going to come. So being able to use weapons and defend against weapons are really important. I don't think you can have just one or the other.
Both. Excellent. When was it that you decided to kind of start your own thing then and become a coach? And was it easy for you to coach? Are you quite a natural coach, or was it a struggle?
I'm quite a natural coach. So one of the first jobs I ever had, I was a teacher. Weirdly, for the kind of stuff I do, I was an RE teacher. I'm an RE teacher that teaches people how to beat the hell out of each other. But I started off as a teacher. So teaching people is relatively natural to me. And I was already teaching anyway, from the boxing and from the judo and from the other martial arts. You know, I was used to training people. I really struggle teaching children, and I try not to teach children as a personal preference. I think it's really important children learn martial arts, but I find it really hard to manage children's class and adult. I don't have the time to do both, and I think mixing it together doesn't make it good for adults or kids. You know, For me, I was really struggle with that. So I focus on self-defense for adults, and I try and bring something different to the table. There are lots of relatively similar self-defense systems out there. You know, if people are familiar with things like Defense Lab and Casey, and there's lots of predominantly elbow cover self-defense arts out there, and there are lots of kind of Krav and Krav clone arts out there. So if people want that, you know, that's cool, and there are so many brilliant instructors in each of those things. But I wanted to do something a little bit different, and as Bartitsu's self-defense built out of combat sports, I thought that's a place I could bring something useful that the other arts don't necessarily specialize in or bring to the table.
Perfect. Do you find you get a specific type of person coming to the gym then, like to train with you, or is it quite a mixture and a medley of individuals?
It's a massive mixture. You get people that are into history and like historical things, so those guys come. I get often, you know, I train out of a boxing gym, and I've got a lot of boxers, a lot of kickboxers, MMA guys, and they're training out that gym. And you see them peeking through the side, like, what is that nutter doing with it? You know? And I tend to get a lot of people that would normally take the piss. And I totally get it, because you would laugh at some of the stuff in historical European martial arts, people with a fighting background. But the more they talk to me and they get their heads around, and you see them casting a beady eye, then they'll pop in the next week, and then they'll start to love it. And they love the notion of putting on the fencing masks, bashing hell out of each other, doing the different things. So I get a good mix of guys that are into history, guys that are into modern martial arts or combat sports. What I also find is I get a lot of people that are about to do things for self-defense. So I get a lot of people that are about to go on a gap year, or people that are about to go work in slightly more dangerous parts of the world. So I always get people join up and say, right, I've got 8 weeks, 12 weeks. Can you show me some stuff that suits that situation? I really love that, because it's like working to a brief. You know, if you can look at the human and say, right, you're 7 stone wet. So there's some techniques that I'm just not going to even bother for you. You know, for you, these bits of the syllabus are what you need to stay safe as you go backpack through Laos or whatever you're going to do. You know, so I like to put a spin on that, and I take a really good inspiration from Eddie Quinn's the approach. You know, Eddie Quinn is a Salat master. He's a brilliant Thai boxer. He's got all these arts under his skin, but distilled that into the approach. Now I'm going with quite a few more techniques in the approach, but I think that the psychology of that, really boiling it down for people, is really good. It's really useful.
Yeah, perfect. What would you say is the single most important thing in self-defense then, from your experience and from your own teachings? Is there a single thing? Is it mindset? Is there a technique? Is there what do you think?
I think for many people, the awkward truth is that you've got it or you don't. The fundamental thing is, if I go to a council estate in Scarborough and smack a lad around the head with no amount of training, he's gonna go for it. He's gonna have it. He's gonna fight. He's got that fighting mentality, that fighting ethos. I think for many people, you've either got that or you don't. I think you can expand it, evolve it, grow it, nurture it. Some people, it's a kind of a binary question. They have it or they don't have it. So I think, you know, if you do have it, I think for many people, outside of the psychology of self-defense, I think that the most basic is learn to hit really hard. You know, people can talk about all the different attributes, speed, technique, cunning, all that kind of stuff, but most fights last all of 3 hits. You want your 3 to be decent. You know?
Yeah.
So by hard, you know, it's on target. It has the right power, has the right speed. But I think for a lot of people, they spend so long learning about the fence and talking hands and de-escalation. But many of those things come to you relatively natural. It's quite hard. I think many arts over-rehearse that kind of stuff.
Sure.
They practice the fence and de-escalation and talking. But you know, in reality, you're speaking to Gary, who's an accountant. You regulate the fear, but you know it's Gary. So that it's never going to really replicate the, oh my God, he's going to smash my face in a way that proper sparring, proper fighting will. So I think, you know, core is self-defense is learn a couple of very basic techniques, learn to do them with bad intentions, and learn to do them from different areas. Many people get so used to always attacking from the front, but people got, you know, can I do it sitting down, lying down? Can I do it while I'm on top of you? Can I do it while you're on top of me? You know, there are so many variables to fighting, and we get so used to fighting in just a boxing or a kickboxing or a grappling range. Real life is full of many shades of grey of where you need to defend yourself.
Very true. Yeah. Excellent. Where do you see your own training going then, and your own club? Like, what's the plans for the future, I suppose, post-COVID, let's say?
So post-COVID, I'm an active boxer myself. So there's a title fight which I really want to nail because the belt is lovely, and I need that. Belt. So for me, I need to focus a lot. I need to get back to grassroots, get back into my boxing and start training. I've probably been coaching a bit too much. I need to get back into kind of being an horrible, nasty fighter man. A lovely supportive coacher man. In terms of my own development in martial arts, I want to take a real forensic look at catch wrestling. I'm a pretty good judo player, jiu-jitsuka, but I'm not the best wrestler, and I really want to work on catch wrestling. That's a big one for me personally. I think for the club, I want to get more of the guys competing. So a lot of them have been training the self-defensive stuff. I want to throw them in a little bit more to some of the combat sports to test it and try it. And a lot more inter-club training. You know, I want them to feel what it's like going against people that do karate, people that do the JKD. You know, I think there's not so much of that anymore. You used to, back in the day, get tons of inter-clubs, and clubs would really love to play with each other. Now you'd struggle to get 2-3 clubs come together. I'm not sure why that is, but they used to be so important that, to me, they're more important than the fights, really. If you're doing the kind of sparring matchups between clubs, you all learn something, you all get something from it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Moving kind of onto that then, what do you think the general state of the martial arts is now in the UK, abroad? As someone who's trained in lots of different things before.
State of martial arts. I think the martial arts are in need of some good publicity again. I think that the marketing machine behind MMA is amazing, and I love MMA. I really do. I love it. But I think that a lot of the more traditional or single set martial arts have taken their foot off the gas. They used to just running a club in a leisure centre, having the same 15 people. It's almost like most martial arts are just on like life support at the moment. I don't see many clubs really throwing themselves into public demonstrations anymore, or trying to be on TV or radio. I think people have got a bit lazy with marketing it. Because there's a certain type of people, there's certain groups of people that will always love martial arts, but there's a whole community out of people that would love it and really dig it, but they never get exposed to it. MMA has done amazing by combining the availability of clubs, membership packages, with kind of the media. I think other martial arts have started to lose that media. I don't know about your club, but one of the things that really spikes interest in mine is films. So, for example, when Sherlock Holmes films came out, everybody wanted to learn things like Bartitsu. When Game of Thrones is out, everyone wants to learn how to use a sword. When you know, people thought jiu-jitsu was dead boring, and then they see John Wick, and now everybody wants to do classical jiu-jitsu, which was kind of dead. You know, the media really does drive it, but I think coaches can do more, be more, you know, essentially be more of the community, get into the community, hold big events, do public-facing things. You know, and I think it's great now. I see martial artists like Steve Lowe runs a karate club, amazing karate club, and he crowdsourced the building of his dojo. You know, I see what Russell Johnston does, and he's got, you know, outreach programs, putting pads with kids over the summer. You know, that kind of stuff, that grassroots community engagement, I think, has fallen by the wayside. I remember when I was a kid, there was always, at the opening of a local leisure centre, there'd be some taekwondo club back from boards and doing stuff. You don't get that much anymore. They're a bit lazy. They're just complacent, waiting for people. I think they would get they're too used to the internet, I think, for many instructors. I love the internet. I love making videos and content, but they're so used to pupils saying karate classes, Doncaster, and finding out where you are, as opposed to going out to where the kids and the people that need to train.
Speaking to people,
Speaking to people. You know, word of mouth is still hugely important.
Yeah, definitely. Finally, let's move on to the videos. So you've recently started putting quite a lot of videos out there, quite a lot of content, kind of the things that you've been doing. Why is that? Like, why did you want to put it out there? What are the plans for the future of doing that?
So I love making the videos. You know, it's good fun, and like everybody, bored during COVID. And I miss the one-to-one teaching. But I found that with the videos, I get a lot of requests come for different themes and things to cover. So those come in, and I feel like if I've got the time and the ability to do it, why not? I don't train martial arts for money. I make just enough money off my classes to keep the class open. I've got a good job. I don't need to. There's nothing against people that have to run their class for money, but for me, the class is for lols. My job's my job, and I keep them very, very separate, which allows me then to not worry about having content behind a paywall or join this subscription program or direct debit. In the way I run my club, I can feel fully confident to give stuff away for free, and I'm cool with it. I really love it. So I'll be publishing more videos. I'm probably going to ramp up the sophistication of it. I work in an advertising agency, and I'm still making rubbish videos on my phone. I'm probably going to invest in a better camera. I'll also start, as COVID lifts, working with other guest instructors, because I don't want it to look like the Tommy Moore show. I want to bring in all the people. I've got a brilliant Savate instructor, Elaine. He's amazing. There's no point learning Savate for me when I can put my actual Savate instructor in front of people and
sure.
to kick people in the liver and make them cry. He's really good at that. Other things I'm working on. So I've just finished a book. So I've got a book coming out very soon. And that's a training guide. So if you're a relatively experienced martial artist, it's a Bartitsu training guide for you to open up your own club and kind of work it to a syllabus and play with it. So it's more of a guide than a book, but that's having its final photo shoot in the next couple of weeks.
Fantastic.
And I'm also working on a couple of films. So due to the weird nature of what I do and how historical it is, I get people approach me for historic and period films. So I've had it for Kingsman in the past. So the guys that look after the Kingsman fight scenes, they ask for some consultancy on how would people use Bartitsu for that.
Sure.
So I've had a couple of people from different genres want requests for advice for fight scenes, which is really cool. It's really random. I'm not studying instructor in any way, but they take source material and they turn that into good movie fighting. I think it's really cool. So a lot of activity, a lot of exciting stuff ahead. But for me, it's just about putting content out there for people, letting people play with it. I encourage arguments and discussion and debate. I love all that stuff. I think the internet's great for that. So we're at a time now where martial arts instructors need to use it or lose it. You've got time and you've got people's attention. Put stuff out there for people to enjoy.
Fantastic. Brilliant. So thank you so much for your time, Tommy. Really good talking to you.
Lovely speaking to you too.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Tommy. Thanks. Bye.